G'day everyone and welcome to round 2 of the Coach's Box, brought to you by CrowCast. Of course, we're looking at the Crows' Essendon clearances this episode, and it might be a little bit controversial. I don't know whether everyone will expect exactly what this is going to throw up, so it should be quite interesting. Before we get into it, of course, just a reminder that we're brought to you by wouldnt sports analysis software. It's a fantastic piece of kit. If you're part of an ammo club or you're a junior club or you just like sports analysis, get around this software. It allows you to do just about everything you need to do. It's fantastic. I've been using it quite a bit over the last month or so. Go to wouldnt.sport, use CrowCast10 as the code in the checkout, and you get a little discount off the purchase that you make. All right, let's get into it. And it was the Crows, of course, getting up comfortably by 61 points, 25-11, 161 to 15-10, 100, leaking a few goals there. But as Malcolm says, you only got to kick more than the opposition. So we'll take that as read from the Messiah. Look, it was an interesting game, quite different to the St Kilda game the previous weeks. There's the AFL stats there just as a bit of a reference for you, but of course we're going to dive a little bit deeper, and as mentioned, we're talking about clearances today. So without any further ado, let's look at the rucks first of all. And Riley O'Brien attended most of the contest, 36. Riley Thilthorpe attended 8. Positive result for Riley, 11, pretty low, and for the other Riley Thilthorpe, only 2. So not fantastic return for effort there from either of those two lads. In the ratings, look, we're going to have a look at each of the 3 phases in a moment, but it gets quite negative. In terms of the rucks rating, in the centre, we got pantsed a bit, I've got to say. Riley O'Brien, -4 rating. Riley Thilthorpe, -2 rating. Around stoppage, -2 rating for Riley Thilthorpe and Riley O'Brien, and the same with the throw-ins. So we weren't terribly effective in terms of our ruck work in either phase or in any of the phases during the course of the match. All right, let's just have a look at some of the footage, and then we'll come back and have a look and see how that all pans out. So this first piece of footage here, you can see we've got probably our best combination, and ranks, when he's got the ball on his terms, there's no one better, but unfortunately that's not always the case. This one here, we have Peatling in the middle. You can see that, I just put this in because why don't they call it back? To be honest with you, just ridiculous. This one here is one of Riley's good wins, and you can see Jordan gets separation here, but it was a weird handball selection. Not sure why he didn't go for Jake Saligo there. Would have released Hinge on the outside, and we got a hat kick instead. This one here, again, it's the same scenario, but this time Saligo gets hold of it, does give the little handball, which does allow Dawson to give off to Mitch Hinge, and away we go, off to the races. This one's Riley Thilthorpe. You'll notice that he gets bodied out of it pretty easily, and Crouchy got beaten as well there. And the thing about Crouch, this is highlighting the laziness. He just didn't follow up. This one again showing Crouch's laziness. He just didn't chase this guy. Just didn't chase him. Ends up just jogging. I know that they're little things, but that's where Essendon got us continually. Draper absolutely murdered O'Brien, and anyone who doesn't think he'd be a improvement, I don't know what to tell you. This one again, Thilthorpe, you can see he gets bodied out of it a fair bit, gets pushed out of it. This is, though, looking at Sid's second and third efforts. You can see how far behind he was there, and all of a sudden he's impacting the play. Once again, O'Brien, and another bad read from Crouch. So in terms of my observations about both ruckmen, I thought Riley O'Brien was actually quite insipid. He didn't handle the young lad from Essendon very well. He didn't handle Draper either when Draper went into the ruck. He does not like blokes that are tall and can jump, and that's exactly what both of the Essendon ruckmen could do. And towards the end there, Riley was just coming in from the side and trying to nullify them at centre bounce. At stoppage and throw-in, it was a little bit better, but we really didn't get a lot of effective work out of either of those two lads. And look, we've got Cherry coming up next week, and he's going to be a very, very big test for both of our ruckmen. And Riley O'Brien's going to have to come up with something, because right now he's not looking like a frontline ruckman for an AFL side, to be perfectly honest with you. He did well last week at centre bounce, but of course that was against pretty much an SANFL ruckman, and he certainly got brought back to the pack this week. Riley Thilthorpe, really ineffective. Didn't look comfortable, to be honest with you. Didn't handle the either ruckman. He rucked more against Draper than the other lad, but against either of them, he wasn't really very good. He didn't look as energetic around centre bounce attendances this week. Last week, you'll remember, he was following up his work. This week, not so much. And he got bodied a bit, to be honest with you. A couple of times he got pushed around, and I don't know. Whether he hasn't done a lot of ruck practice or whether he's been concentrating on his forward craft, I'm not sure. But we certainly didn't get a lot from either of those two lads. Now, following on from that footage that we talked through, the centre clearance influence ranking, you remember I come up with a ranking based not only on disposals but also on positive acts, negative acts, turnovers, etc., etc. So the unweighted results see Jordan Dawson, having attended 30 centre bounces, has a ranking of 5, which is pretty low compared to the points last week. James Peatling, 21 for 5, Draper 14 for 3, Saligo 21 for 2, and Rankin 15 for -1. And you'll notice there, surprisingly, that Matty Crouch doesn't feature. He actually ended up with -5. Now, before we move on to the weighted results, just a comment about this, because I also factor in negative impact like turnovers, not blocking, failing to maintain your position with your opposition, allowing your opponent to get separation, all those sorts of things. These scores were really dragged down by some of the negative work, and you would have seen that from the footage that we just looked at. Some of the negative work from all of these lads, and whilst they all did some positive things, they also made a few errors and were pretty lazy at times, and they're not going to be able to be like that against the Kangaroos next week. The weighted rankings sees James Peatling up on top with 10 points. Again, James hits the lead simply because he made the fewest errors. Sid Draper also 9 points from 14 attendances. Again, a lot of positive work from Sid. Not a lot of negative work. I don't think he scored a negative point, to be honest with you. Geordie Dawson, 7 from 30 attendances. Saligo, 4 from 21. Rankin drops to -3. Ranks was a bit lazy around centre bounce, as we saw. All right, let's have a look at stoppage and throw-in, and then we'll have a look at the rankings for those. So starting with some stoppage, and you can see Essendon here, and this particular one, they're asleep, and that's a fantastic little wraparound move there by Isaac. Don't know whether Peatling was on board, but Isaac certainly was, and Jake Saligo was too, and it was a great tap by O'Brien, one of the few, and you can see that Saligo's run very heavily to support there, and away they go. Now this one here, this is a classic Riley O'Brien where he hits to convenience. There's no way that ball should go there, no way at all, and as a consequence, Essendon have the fat side of the ground, the open side of the ground, and they're able to get a shot on goal. Really bad play by Riley O'Brien there, and a weird setup by us as well. This one particular here, Dawson looks to be in a bad position, but he's actually about to put in a pretty good block. And as a consequence, Crouchy's got the ball. Now this one here, Scholl would normally have an outlet here. This is unusual, and it's the pressure that Essendon put on that caused him to kick around the body. But again, we're a bit slack around that contest. This one here, Curtin gets sucked into it and releases the Essendon guy. It's just a simple mistake on his part. This one here, Crouch is working the lane here. It's a really good illustration of what he was able to do around stoppage. Look at that little block from Geordie. Just gets his leg around and stops Merritt from being able to get through. Really good play by Geordie there on that one. This one here, we've got a 3v2 setup here, and this looks like a setup for Rankin. You can see the lanes there. Ranks is waiting, but the throw-in was short. But again, Matty Crouch has followed through really well. This is a change from last week. Geordie doesn't get sucked in, so he's there to get the outlet and get the ball away. This one here, this is a fantastic look at the Benny Keys goal. Jordan Dawson actually comes in to apply the block. You can see that he's not even watching the ball. He's looking at Keys' opponent. Blocks Keys' opponent. Keys gets the lane. It wasn't the best of throw-ins, but the ball bounced Benny's way, and he made the most of it. Fantastic. Now here we have Curtin and his opponent. I think that's I can't remember who that is, but Dan's trying to put the block on. But in the meantime, he's lost sight of his opponent, and then he doesn't stick that tackle. So Dan needs to be a little bit stronger there. Good follow up by the baby giraffe, but Dan's just caught out of position and out of sync with that one. Right, just my centre's clearance observations. Sid Draper is made for the midfield. His speed and his follow-up work, as we mentioned previously last week, and as was evident again from the footage that we looked at, is outstanding. And he's just an out-and-out midfielder through and through. As I mentioned before, our midfield was generally lazy at centre bounce. If the ball was coming their way, they did well, but Merritt might have had some sort of leprosy or something because no one wanted to get near him, and Merritt's ability to get separation is amazing, and he is an elite reader of the ball. So his ability to read taps and read where balls are going to go, he seemed to be just a half a second ahead of our blokes all day, and that's why he racked up 635 touches. You don't score 17 goals from turnovers unless your opponent has hit a fair bit of the ball themselves. And that's the case. Like, we scored an amazing amount of goals, 109 points, I think it was, from turnover. But that means that Essendon had it a lot, and they did get first use of it quite a bit from centre bounce and also from stoppage. And it was just our ability to pressure them, but it was also their propensity just to make mistakes, basic skill errors that a better team won't, and we won't have the same opportunity to burn an opponent on turnover to the same extent. If we're talking about someone like Hawthorn or Geelong, who just don't give up the ball that easily, their ball security is a lot better than Essendon was, and we're just not going to get the same opportunities. We must improve around centre bounce. It's a non-negotiable. We will get cut up against less wasteful opponents. All right, so around stoppage, the influence rankings, Matty Crouch there gained some reprieve with 8 points, Jake Saliga with 6, Isaac with 4, Sid with 2, Peatling with 2. Crouch was much better around stoppage this week. As I mentioned last week in the video, he was a little bit flat-footed and a little bit stagnant, but he was on the move a lot more this week. He was being proactive, followed in some other players at times when he was the free bloke, hit the lane a couple of times, and his work around stoppage was much better. Jake Saligo's just busy all the time. He's just busy. Isaac Rankin took his opportunities when they were there, but as I mentioned, was a little bit slack at times. Sid didn't get a lot of work around stoppage, and Peatling was a bit hit and miss, but what he did do well, and it was enough to score a couple of points. In regards to throw-ins, again, it was Matty Crouch with 6, Draper with 5, Keys with 4, Peatling and Dawson 3 apiece. Same comments, really. Crouch was a lot more dynamic at throw-ins than he was previously, same with the stoppage situation. He was on the move a little bit more, and he was looking to make something happen rather than sitting back. Sid Draper is just his speed and power and his ability to find the ball, and his second efforts are just amazing. Benny Keys probably scored most of his points from that one run through to score that goal on the forward line, but he is a menace around stoppage in the forward 50. He's a real asset for us. And we obviously have some plays set up for him because we put on blocks, we set up lanes. The ruckman knows where he is, and teams are going to have to put in some work to their stoppage work around our forward 50 if they're going to blunt his influence. James Peatling and Dawson were just busy. Peatling overall a couple of times lacked a little bit of strength. He got pushed off the ball by Merritt a couple of times and by Caldwell a couple of times. But he doesn't give up trying, and some of his second efforts were great, and when he did get on the end of it, he used the ball well. And Geordie Dawson was just Mr. Reliable. His points overall a little bit lower than I expected for his clearance work, but as we'll see in follow-up videos in terms of the transition work, he was elite in that area, and that's where he gave us the most value. So there you have it. All right, my observations around throw-ins. Look, Essendon, as I mentioned in the preview video, they are scrappers. They don't give you a lot of space. They play pretty close. And, Durham is a bit of a terrier, so he will play close, but he will go at the ball when it's there to be gone for. And Merritt is just elite at creating space and separation for himself, and his ability to read the play is first rate. Essendon were generally better at the scrap. I can't spell generally there, but they tended to win when the ball was in a scrappy situation. If we were able to get clean disposal out of stoppages, we tended to win, but when it was a bit of a scrap, they tended to fight a little bit harder than us. Our repeat efforts, though, were good, and the thing with Essendon, when they did get clearance, it often wasn't clean. It was a hack kick or it was affected by a tackle, and so our secondary work, as you'll see in the follow-up videos, was excellent, and that's where all our turnovers came from. If Essendon were a bit cleaner out of stoppage, then we wouldn't have had the same opportunities, and we wouldn't have scored so heavily on turnover. Our rucks at stoppage were marginally better, as I said before, because it was more body on body. Riley O'Brien is better in that circumstance than when someone's running at him. He doesn't like it when someone's running at him, but when he can get body and use that body to his advantage, he's generally a bit better. And I've got to say, it's not something I've ever noticed before, but the standard of throw-ins this year has been horrific. The amount of short throw-ins is just horrendous at the moment. Of course, rucks have got to start from a fair way back because they don't want to give up the corridor, so they'd rather it be short. They can push the ball back to the boundary line rather than be caught underneath it and be forced to hit the ball behind them. And boundary umpires have got one job: throw the ball in. And you would think that they would be able to do that consistently. So, just an observation that really annoyed me while I was doing this analysis. Overall, the Engine Room Award for Round 2 goes to Sid Draper, controversially. 16 ranking points. So overall, good on you, Sid, for a quarter and a half's work. And it comes down to the fact that he didn't make any errors. He got his hands on it a few times, but his follow-up work and his second and third efforts were outstanding. And, that just goes to show that if I really hope that Draper gets a start next week. I would like to see him get a start. Peatling on 15, just a workhorse. An up and down game for James, but what he did very well, and he certainly offset the errors that he did make a couple of times in centre stoppage with some good work around the ground. Soligo just busy with 12, Dawson 11, and Crouch made up for some pretty poor centre bounce work with some good stuff around stoppage and throw-ins with 8. All right, so look, my final thoughts on the whole matter, and be happy to receive your comments in the comment section below, because I think there will be some comments. We certainly didn't maintain last week's high standard at centre bounce, and I think a lot of that was to do with the quality of the ruckman. Obviously last week Harry from Norwood was not really a match for Riley. It was only his first game coming straight out of the SANFL, and Riley was able to do a bit of a number on him, but this week it was a different story, and our Riley O'Brien in particular, but both of our boys needed to pick it up. look, we gave them far too much separation at times. I feel like we didn't give them enough respect. Probably the strength of Essendon is their stoppage work. It's shown out through the stats. It's where they get us continually. And that's where they get a lot of their scores. So, it wasn't evident to me that we were hanging off them on purpose. It just looked like sometimes our setups were wrong. Sometimes blokes were flat-footed and didn't read. They just maybe went a bit switched on. I'm not sure, but we cannot bring that against North. North will towel us up with their quality midfield if we bring that to the table. James Peatling needs to work on his strength. So a couple of times he just got pushed off it by Merritt and Caldwell in particular. And not only that, he needs to go when it's his turn. He needs to be, I think I mentioned this last week, needs to be a little bit more proactive. He's still a little bit hesitant, feeling for body. I'd like to see him be a bit more positive in his work. As I said, I'd love to see Sid start next week. I wouldn't mind seeing a swap between Sid and James Peatling. It's going to be hot early in the clinches. North have got a very good midfield, and I think Sid Draper, with his explosive pace, his ability to step, and his second and third efforts are going to be really invaluable early. And I think it might set a tone for the midfield to have that young lad in there. So if it were me, I would make that swap, Sid for James, and I would maybe look, if Sid runs out of gas, then obviously it's the same sort of situation where James can come on midway through the third or whatever. But I think, Peatling ranked well in this particular analysis, but around the grounds he's not doing a huge amount, and just probably shaded a little bit by Sid in terms of head-to-head effectiveness. So, I'd definitely give Sid a run. Right, look, that's it from me. Thanks very much for joining us again for the Coach's Box. I will follow this up this week with the transition analysis and also the defence and forward analysis. Last week was just a time crunch. I will post those at some stage just for completeness. Yes, so those other two videos will drop over the next couple of days. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch us on Sunday evening for the weekend wrap. Until then, thanks very much for joining us, and we'll see you later.